One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Columbia, this is Houston, AOS over.
Welcome back to TKW draft season. I am your co-host Jess, joined by my co-host Nick. Nick, what is up? How are we doing?
I am living the dream, Jess. The Lakers are about to get eliminated from the playoffs, and I'm quite happy. How are you?
Hopefully. To put a timestamp on this, we're recording the day after the Knicks were eliminated, unfortunately. But that also hopefully means it won't be too long before you hear this. So that's exciting. And then we'll start.
It is funny, Jess. It's one of the many thoughts I had during that terrible game yesterday when the Knicks were eliminated. It was like, we talked during our last recording of hoping that it's going to be a while until the listeners are able to hear us because we have this long potential playoff run to get through for the Knicks, where we're assuming they can beat the Hawks and force something in the second round with Philly, and they get eliminated in 5 games. So at least we get our draft coverage going.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. I think people have forgotten that the Knicks weren't supposed to be this good. And it's like turned into like, oh, that was like terrible or whatever. But like, they weren't supposed to be there. We didn't know Julius was going to do that. But that's for the main pod to talk about. We are here to talk draft content. And, you know, usually we try to keep it Knicks-centric. That doesn't always work for us, partly because sometimes we don't know who the Knicks are taking. And also we just will talk about any and all prospects. And for this pod, I think we kind of want to get that out of our system, or at least try to. Leading into this past season, thinking it was potential that the Knicks were at least in the lottery. Maybe not Cade level. We could dream it was Cade level, except that was a weird dream because that would mean that they like really sucked, obviously. But we've wanted to talk about Cade for so long, and it's just really funny that like this is the year they're good. This is the year like we don't get to talk about those guys, except we do because we get to decide what we're talking about. So I think we're kind of taking this episode to also just kind of, I would say, like educate you guys on who you're going to hear a lot about leading up to the draft. Because, even with the Knicks picking lower, it's not like people are just going to tune in for that. So we kind of want to give you some overall knowledge about who these upper tier guys are. So everyone kind of just has a general base of what went down in the college season, who were the big time guys, who's going early. And then as we get closer and closer to the draft, we'll kind of hone in on potential Knick picks and things like that.
I think what you really mean by all of that, Jess, is no matter what, they were not going to be able to keep us from talking about Cade Cunningham and Jalen Suggs.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. It pains me that I'm not sure how I'm going to fit Giddey into this season.
We'll do an international guys pod.
Yeah.
We'll do it. We have to.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, if any of y'all follow me on Twitter, you knew day one it was a Jalen Suggs stan account. Maybe day 2. I think it was day 2. In the, what was that thing called? The Fort Myers tip off. Baby, great memories. But yeah, so let's get it going. I just want to start talking just kind of like I said, general landscape of the college season. So speaking of Suggs, I mean, the team of the season was Gonzaga, right? Like they were ranked preseason 1 and they never left won.
Until they did.
Until they did. Until it mattered. But yeah, like I said, like I fell in love with that Zags team from game 1 of that Fort Myers tip-off. Jalen Suggs had me swooning from game 2 versus Auburn.
Now, Jess, let me ask you: is it because he played football in high school?
You know, it's because he played football in high school. Well, it's not because he played football in high school. It's because what he does because he played football in high school, I guess.
Specifically the full court passes.
The full court passes, it's that, but it's also like this, like he's just ready to run through someone or a wall, or he's ready to just run through anything to get the ball to the bucket, I feel like. And to like will his team, like he just has that, like he wants to will his team to win. I mean, we saw it with that game winner too, which I wish I could wake up to every morning, like in Smart House. Like that is what I would wake up to if I had the choice. I mean, and the team, like, I mean, I don't think I've ever watched so much dang West Coast Conference basketball, but you know, in that championship game, they were down by 12 at halftime. People were like, "Oh, is this it? Is this the undefeated season, or at least undefeated?" Undefeated season before the tournament. Like, is this where it happens? Is where it ends? But they went on 11-2 run in that first 4 minutes, and it's kind of led by that 3-headed monster of Suggs, Kispert, and Timmy, who is coming back, has recently announced something to note. But I think what made this year different, not just from from Suggs playing, because this is, you know, the first time someone ranked that high decided to go to Gonzaga. You know, I think the knock on Gonzaga is always that they're not playing anyone in the regular season, right? Like there's always, you know, who are they really playing? And then when it comes to the tournament time, they can't step up. But I mean, they played teams ranked 5, 10, 11, and 16 in the coaches' poll. And 3 of those 4 wins were by double digits. The only one that wasn't, Suggs left mid-game with an injury. So it was just kind of them foot on the gas pedal the entire season. And to kind of counteract that, Baylor was their number 2 the whole season. I think there was 1 week they were ranked 3rd. Unfortunately, we were robbed of a regular season game between the two. Because I believe it was Gonzaga had the positive case that led to that being canceled. And then Baylor got hit with a 3-week hiatus later in the season. So Baylor, who obviously are now the champions and ended up beating Gonzaga in that championship game, like who knows what would have happened if they played in that regular season game. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have any overall thoughts on Gonzaga before I get into Baylor?
No, we'll talk about Gonzaga throughout draft season. Specifically,
Yeah.
we'll talk about Corey Kispert a little more. Suggs was always a pipe dream, like you said, once the Knicks started really competing. And Suggs he was a really good prospect going into the year, but I don't think anyone expected him to be as clearly top 3 as he was. He really jumped some guys throughout the year.
For sure.
It wasn't ever going to be realistic for the Knicks to get him, but that's not going to stop us from enjoying him or talking about him. He really was just an absolute blast to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm trying to remember where he might have started in the beginning of the season, but like he definitely wasn't ranked above the Ignite guys at first. Maybe that's where he fell to, around like maybe 6th, 7th. I don't even know if he was that high.
Yeah, no, that mid to late lottery, that like 7 to 10 range.
Yeah. And I think he's just perfect example of like pick the right school for you. I mean, Gonzaga's offense is going to make a lot of guys look pretty good just in the way that they run things. But
yeah, I mean,
I think
it is. We'll talk about it. As we're talking about both of these guys today. But it is funny, and when we talk about Cade, I'll get on my high horse about overreactions to the NCAA tournament. But watching Cade playing with the teammates and offense he played in compared to the teammates and offense that Jalen Suggs played with is just night and day.
Mhm.
Man, like it. Why does everyone just not do what Jalen Suggs did? Just go to schools like that and just dominate.
for sure. Absolutely. All right. So let's wrap up kind of this college, I guess, summary. So like we said, Baylor obviously won. You know, they came off that hiatus a little bit sluggish. I think that first game back was that Iowa State game where they were down 17 points, eventually came back, but Iowa State is freaking abysmal. So that was just like, whoa, what's going on here? But their only loss was to Kansas in the regular season. And then they lost to Cade and Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship. But I think that game kind of gave them the gut check that they needed going into the tournament. They obviously went on to win 6 straight by an average of 15 points, including beating that Gonzaga team I just gushed so much about by 16 points, which was very depressing for me. It wasn't even like
absolutely delightful for me.
Well, yeah. But even if I didn't love like Suggs and that whole team so much, I had a feeling they were going to be kind of hungover after that game-winning shot by Suggs. I feel like that was just kind of bound to happen. But like for a championship game, for it to be a 16-point win, like it was just boring, honestly. I'm sure it wasn't boring for Baylor fans, but it was for me.
Yeah, it was not a fun national title. But as someone who pretty avidly roots against Gonzaga all the time, even though I will also gush with you about how much fun they were to watch this year, I really enjoyed it, and I absolutely passionately hate Drew Timme. So
he should go be a WWE star eventually. That's what he needs to do.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on Drew Timme and to a lesser extent Corey Kispert is just like if Duke didn't start being a one and done school, they both would have went to Duke. Like they fit really well in like 2007 Duke rosters.
I don't like that.
But that's what they are.
Mainly for Kispert, just because. But all I ever want is the Knicks to pick shooting. I've been doing this 3 years. I've never not asked for shooting. Please, one time, Knicks, just one time, for me. Begging.
Yeah, and I don't see Kispert being available. But
No.
boy, that feels like the perfect fit, right, for the shooting that they need.
They could move up, which we'll talk about eventually. So other things of note. Speaking of Duke, they were pretty bad, and so was Kentucky, which just brought me immense joy. I know this is the Kentucky Knicks now, and I hate it. And someone suggested in our Slack recently that it should become instead of Kentucky Knicks, become the Duke Knicks, since they already have RJ, and try to get, I don't know, it was someone ridiculous. I don't even remember, but I was like, this is my nightmare, Kentucky and Duke. But so that was fun. UCLA was cool at the end of the season, made it to the Final Four. I still consistently forget Mick Cronin is the coach there. It still doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how it's happened. Shout out Johnny Juzang.
Absolutely.
He hasn't officially said either way if he's going. I'm sure it depends on, I don't know if he's doing combine or what he's doing, but
he's currently in the portal. I think the tea leaves I've seen are that he'll come back, but who knows?
I could see him being a dude that just kills it in the like have like a herder type of combine and just like all of a sudden be like, hey, actually you're gonna be a first round pick. Like I could see him, and because I mean he's a bucket, and that shows I feel like in the combine.
Yeah. Also, that recency bias that I talked about hating, that will to get some really bad takes out there on someone like Cade, will also really help someone like Johnny Juzang.
For sure, absolutely. So yeah, since you brought up Cade, let's get into it. It is your time. You just do you. Tell me about Cade. Tell the people.
Cade Cunningham is, I don't even know where to say without being too hyperbolic, because we've seen such a great run of prospects, because you're going to hear words like generational and franchise changing when talking about Cade. But we've had these guys in the last couple of drafts. We had Zion, we had Luka, but he is that tier of a prospect. And he got some critique throughout the season because of team success, even though Oklahoma State ultimately did overperform their talent level, I think, pretty clearly.
Mm-hmm.
But he is that kind of guy that even Luka, even when you don't have a ton of talent around him, he makes a difference. He is that kind of player. He's a 3-level scorer, a playmaker that can make his team better in really every way, and half court as well as in transition and pushing, and is just truly an unbelievable passer and can make these kind of passes that will just blow your mind with the way that he sees the game, and almost, I'm not comparing him to LeBron as a prospect, but those sort of passes that like are just 3 steps ahead of what everybody else on the court is seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gonna change. He's gonna change one franchise in the NBA's future. I think that's pretty clear. He is a player that I don't really know what the weaknesses are. I guess you would say his explosiveness, being able to go by guys off the dribble, would be if you had to say. But with his body control, and just has unbelievable control of his body, I don't see that being an issue in getting to the basket. I mean, and again, the shot needs to be a little more consistent from the outside, but he's a really good shooter, because that's almost always with these kind of players. Like, that's always the thing that you're worried about, if that's going to translate. But all of his signs showed that it's there. I mean, he's a willing shooter in college, which was something that he shot more than I expected him as a prospect. And he's just a very good shooter. And if that's there in the NBA, along with his passing, his size, and his athleticism, I mean, he's going to be an elite 2-way player for his entire career. I don't see any way he's not.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about him being a 2-way player and his defense, there's one play that sticks out in my mind. It was against Kansas, and it was like last minute of the game. Guy drove. Cade was playing help side. He came over, blocked it with 2 hands, saved it from out of bounds, and then there was like 2 passes for. They either got a layup or the guy got fouled going up for the layup. But he just like he has those instincts.
Yeah, it really is the instincts, and he had one of those passes this year that's like, again, LeBron Jokic-esque, or I guess if you want to say Lonzo-esque, where it's like saving the ball out of bounds and just throwing it with one hand to start a fast break on the other side from his own basket. Like, just that really rare type of instinct to just be able to make those passes so quickly and just so smart.
Sure. So just to break down a little bit, Cade for the season averaged 20 points, 6 rebounds, 3.5 assists per game. Nearly 44% from the field, 40% from three, and then almost 85% from the line.
Yeah, and for those who don't know about Cade, he's listed as 6'8", 220.
Yeah.
And he's a point guard pretty naturally.
He just looks like an NBA player. Like that's kind of the same thing I said about Michael Porter Jr. Before he got hurt. Like just watching him, like he just moves and looks like an NBA player because of his size, because of the way he handles the ball. And I think there's something to be said about what went down in terms of, Oklahoma State got hit with sanctions or whatever, which didn't even have anything to do with any of the guys on the team now, but they still were technically banned from the tournament. It was this bizarre thing where Oklahoma State appealed it, and the NCAA never accepted their appeal, but because they didn't deny their appeal, they were allowed in the tournament. He easily could have just not gone there. He could have gone to the G League. He could have gone overseas. He could have gone to a different school because of it. I
think that's what most people expected when that first all happened.
Yeah. My argument to that was, well, Ben Simmons didn't play in the tournament, but that was just because LSU really sucked. And, his brother's on staff, all those things. But I think well,
let's talk about it while you just mentioned the name. One thing I do want to talk about is who these guys are going to be compared to as we lead into, because it's always a very interesting part of draft season is the comparisons, both good and bad, and foreign versions of Michael Jordan and what have you. Yeah. But I think the comparison to Cade is going to be, I think, pretty clearly Ben Simmons or some version of Ben Simmons with a jump shot.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because Cade is a really good shooter. And if Ben Simmons was a 40% three-point shooter like Cade is, he would be one of the best players in the NBA.
Be the MVP, I think.
Yeah, I think he would be. But Cade doesn't have that explosiveness that Ben Simmons does to go around people. But because of the size and the passing, and I think the defensive potential, because Cade is a really, really good defender. I think he does project to be an all-NBA type defender.
Yeah, so he doesn't have – oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
He doesn't have the speed, like you said, but he has the footwork and the body control. Like, he pulls, 2 dribble, spin move up on the glass, with ease. Now, will he be able to do that as easily on NBA players and not, I'm going to say Liberty players, because I was just looking up, random clips I had clipped and put on Twitter. I mean, he just made this Liberty dude not know what he was doing with his life. But will he be able to do that in the NBA? I mean, yeah, I think so. Even though those guys, like we said, he's 6'8", he's gonna get those shots. It's gonna be interesting. So, him on if the Rockets do get that number 1 pick, and like I said last episode, it would just be a colossal disaster if the Rockets don't end up with this number 1 pick, I think. But if he ends up there, I mean, Cade and KPJ, that's fun.
It really is. And you said it last time, but they do deserve it. They got put through a lot with James Harden.
Yeah.
On one hand, most teams haven't had a MVP candidate in the last decade. So you could say they don't deserve to go from one in James Harden to potentially another in Cade, but they really do. I like the young guys. I like KPJ. I like KJ Martin just as like a fun alley-oop, lob threat.
It's kind of cool. Cade's from Texas. I think he's from Arlington though, which is more Dallas area, but kind of cool. Stay home state kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, and it is funny with like the Ben Simmons comparison. Like they both went to Mount Verge. They both went to like schools who perennially like have not been great. So the comparisons just kind of like fit too easily for that not to be it. But like that jump shot just makes such a big difference. But let's keep it moving. Oh, go ahead.
My last thing on Cade is I do want to talk about the NCAA tournament revisionist history of it all, of how we look at so much recency bias. And it was with Cade doing with Jalen Suggs doing what he did in the tournament right after a disappointing second round loss for Cade. There was a lot of like, well, maybe, and Mobley went off too. And there was a lot of like, maybe Cade isn't the clear cut number one prospect. He is. He didn't get the ball passed to him for like a 2-minute stretch late in the game. And I don't know why that was.
So annoying.
And I will never know why that is. He also had a lot of guys on this Oklahoma State team that were, if not thinking they were the best player on the court, played like they thought they were the best player on the court and were willing to shoot and run entire possessions. Like Cade Cunningham was not on their team.
Mm-hmm.
And
they also ran into an Oregon State team that all of a sudden went on this was it Elite 8 or Sweet 16 run? Like just ridiculous. And not that should have a lot to do with it, but I feel like that's kind of what kickstarted that run for them. What was beating Cade and Oklahoma State.
Yeah, but I absolutely, and there's nothing bad about that loss from Cade's perspective. He hit some really big shots at some really good plays. Again, didn't take over in the clutch, which you would have probably liked to see, but again, not given opportunities, not pass the ball. It really should not affect how anybody looks at him or has thought about him as a prospect for a second.
Mm-hmm. So just looking at that last game, I mean, he still had 24 points. He wasn't efficient though. Went 6 for 20 from the floor, 2 for 9 at 2, 4 for 11 at 3.
And one of those 3, he hit a big 3 and it looked like he was about to take over.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just didn't get the ball past him again.
Yeah, very bizarre. Very bizarre. But then, I mean, you look at it, he had games against a team like West Virginia, who is known for their defense, shot 63% from the field with 25 points. What was his big game? Yeah, 40 points versus Oklahoma on 57% shooting, 69% from 2. I mean, he just got buckets all season long. And yeah, there's really, what more can we say about Cade other than we love you, Cade. We hope Houston doesn't hurt you. I don't know. Let's keep it rolling. You want to do Suggs next? You want to do Mobley next?
Yeah, let's do Suggs, and we'll keep with the guards before we move to Mobley.
All right. So Jalen Suggs. Oh, Jalen Suggs. How I have loved watching you play basketball. Let's break it down real quick. So for the season, he averaged 14 points, 5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, shot 50% from the field, including 34% from 3, 75% from the free throw line. I mean,
and I do just want to say on those numbers, unlike Cade, who was the focal point of the offense and not surrounded by a ton of talent, Jalen Suggs was on one of the all-time great collegiate offenses and surrounded with talent offensively. That
he was very much thinking about trying to make the people around him better. Like I'm kind of surprised that his assists aren't higher. But even if the assists aren't there, it just continually felt like he was running the offense. No moment was too big. He had this he just had this fire in him. I think that's the part that that kind of goes hand in hand with like being the football player and like having a nose for the ball. Like he just had this fire in him that like he was not gonna let you beat him. And yeah, I mean, I watched so much Gonzaga basketball, and it was a treat. The correlation to the NBA, I think, is going to be interesting. His shot, I think it'll translate. So, like I said, 34% from three. I like the look of his shot. I like the shots that he takes. I think he'll get there. And while he's working on that, like there's no doubt in my mind he can just run an offense and make people around him better.
Yeah, I think the comparison you're going to see the most for Suggs is probably Drew Holiday.
Okay.
And I think he's got a little more of an offensive upside than Drew Holiday.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because I do think you're getting that level of defense and playmaking at the very least. I think of these guys, I mean, I'm not going to say take anyone over Cade in any way. I think all of these guys are elite prospects. But the floor on Jalen Suggs as a prospect is so high.
Yeah.
Because I don't see a world in which he's not a really good defender, really good playmaker, probably secondary playmaker at worst at the NBA level.
Yeah, I agree. And that's without thinking about whether or not the shot is going to fall.
Correct. Because then that's where his ceiling gets into play. If he can become a legit primary scorer and that all remains to be seen. But there is no way where Jalen Suggs is not a really, really good role player. Like I put him in that super role player type prospect category.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like I gushed enough about him while talking about Gonzaga. So let's go to Mobley. Yeah, I would say in mock drafts right now, Mobley and Suggs. I feel like I've seen Mobley more at 2 than Suggs. And then even sometimes the Ignite guys ahead of Suggs. Which is fine. And I think a lot of it also has to do with like team need and stuff. But
I was gonna say there's also some real team dependent stuff. Like if Toronto gets 2, right? Let's say that's a world which I hope happens. They just so clearly need a big. Like it's Evan Mobley, and they don't think twice.
Yeah.
And there are a couple teams that need bigs, but like if it's Detroit, you may not get that, right? Detroit's weird because I don't really know what they need, but they might take a guy like Jalen Green over Mobley just because of your boy Isaiah Stewart. And
I think Isaiah can move to the 4 with Mobley potentially just because of how mobile he was.
But with Jeremy Grant already there, and they have a lot of big wings on their roster.
Yep, it's weird for sure. And I feel like Troy Weaver, he's always got something up his sleeve, especially looking at last year. So It'll be interesting. But I think purely because for geographical reasons, you watched a lot more USC than I did. So yeah, I'm gonna give you the floor on Mobley as well.
Yeah, I watched a lot of USC this year, a lot of Pac-12, and part of that is just being on the West Coast. Part of that is I just love watching Evan Mobley play basketball, and to a lesser extent his brother. But just the defense that they were able to just anchor is just beautiful on every level.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't have the Pac-12 network anymore. I used to. I just don't. They just don't want me to watch, man. Quickly, I'll run through the stats. 16.4 points, 8.7 rebounds, 2 assists, 58-ish% from the floor, and even 30% from 3, and 69% from the free throw line. Yeah, he's a big man. He takes up a lot of space.
He really is, and I think what you're getting with Evan Mobley as a prospect is a franchise-changing defensive anchor. And you draft Evan Mobley with the idea that you are going to have an elite defense in like a Rudy Gobert-esque way, purely because he's on the court.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you get into the conversation about his ceiling, there are some interesting reasons to believe in the shot, and if he could add a 3 that and extend his range a little bit, that is going to be a real difference for him offensively. But if he could be that, Rudy Gobert type defense with a little bit of a better offensive game, let alone if he can extend to the shooting, that's a damn good NBA player.
Yeah.
Like the versatility is really good. What makes him so special as a defender. And he is one of these big guys that you can trust to throw in the pick and roll and can guard him in a few different ways. And you can put him out on the perimeter, put him out on an island, and he's fine. He's not a guy that's going to get ran off the court because of that. And
yeah, absolutely.
Those sort of things, just his defensive IQ and just ability to rim protect and just anchor this defense and know where to position himself, and such a smart off-ball defender. It's just going to make your entire defense. It's going to change an entire defense, knowing that he's there. That's the kind of impact you're going to expect from him as a prospect, which is pretty insane. His defensive numbers at USC are basically comparable only to Anthony Davis at Kentucky in like recent years, or in a long time, just with his shot blocking and impact on the game defensively.
I wonder if after the Vooch trade, the Magic are really hoping they get him, either move up 1 to 2, or maybe the Pistons don't take him if the lottery holds, or maybe they decide they don't want another big guy. But yeah, he's just.
Yeah, I mean, I think Orlando would love to have him. Toronto has to be praying to be able to fall into him in the lottery. A team like OKC that is just accumulating talent. That would be a super interesting. If you had any of these 3 guys to Oklahoma City, I would love it. But you add a guy like Mobley to a defensive core that they already have with Lou Dort and SGA and whatever Poku's going to end up being defensively. That's super appealing. I mean, whoever takes him is going to be thinking that they have their defense set for the next decade.
Yeah. So I was about to lead this into let's do a few tankathon sims and see what happens. And the first one that I just pulled. So now this is tankathon's rankings, but we'll just talk about where the teams fell. Pistons get 1, they get Cade. Kings are 2, so this has Mobley going there. OKC jumped 1 for Suggs. And I know we haven't talked about him, but Warriors jump up to 4 and get Jalen Green. Oh, P.S. OKC also gets Kuminga. They get Suggs and Kuminga.
OKC getting 2 top 5 picks is my just ultimate dream.
But it's bizarre because it's like technically what happened was it's because it's the Rockets' nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
They dropped, so OKC got 4, and the original OKC pick jumped up 1. That is just nightmare fuel for the Rockets. Oh my god. All right. For their sake, I'm gonna do another sim. Let's see what we get. These are just weird. Timberwolves jump up 5 to get Cade. Mobley and then Pistons stay at 2. Magic stay at 3. Interesting. And again, Rockets fall out of it. OKC picks 5 and 6. Oh my god. If this happens to the Rockets, I don't know what I'm going to do on their behalf. I don't even care about the Rockets. I would just feel so bad. Here we go. They stayed in the top 3 in this last one. We'll leave it at that. But yeah, like you said, I mean, I don't really have much to add on Mobley. Like you said, like defensive cornerstone, you're pretty much set once you have him. If he can get that shot going, like, man, like he's legit 7 foot, right?
He's legit 7 foot. He's got a really solid frame. He's thin but strong.
Mm.
And offensively, I mean, he's got nice touch. He's got a decent post game inside. Yeah, I think he's a more reliable scorer than what you would expect from that kind of, if you were to compare him to Gobert. Yeah. He is someone that USC could go to.
For sure.
He doesn't have like the most complex post game, but again,
he definitely, his bag is not extensive in terms of his moves, but he still got it done.
Moves, but it's really more his touch. Like he's pretty solid, just a solid finisher.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
and also an absolute powerhouse dunker.
Right. We all love dunks. We want more dunks.
Yeah, all 3 of these guys are going to put some people on posters next year.
We're all about posters. So I had in mind to talk about one more guy.
Before we move on, my game for you. This is a fun little game that I'm going to be tracking. And it is, what player will get brought up more between now and draft night when talking about Evan Mobley? Will it be James Wiseman or will it be DeAndre Ayton?
See, it's hard because I was about to say, well, because of recency bias, let me say, oh man.
I don't think
like I was gonna say, because of recency, let me say James Wiseman, but also, I mean, the Suns are still playing. But my gut said James Wiseman.
I think so too, and it's interesting because we've all seen the Wiseman and Ayton comparisons. They pop back up this week. with Warriors fans talking about not giving up on Wiseman because of the leap that Ayton made, even though they're very, very different players. So it's an interesting thing because I don't know if either of them are good comparisons. Anthony Davis will certainly get brought up purely because of the defensive dominance at the college level. But I imagine that Wiseman and Ayton will both get brought up for Mobley far more than they should. And it's something I look forward to.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought about that. Interesting. So in most mocks, the next guys coming up are usually like the Ignite guys. But sticking with the college season and guys that we really like that we're probably not going to have a chance to talk about. He's not going to be like, I don't know where he's going to end up going, but anyway, the player is Moses Moody from Arkansas. I think Eli was a very big fan of him all season. He was another one that I think maybe recency bias will hit him a little hard because he did struggle in the tournament, but like Cade had close to no one around him to work with. I mean, that first game, who did they play that first tournament game? And it was just ugly. Do you remember who it was?
Bucknell? I might be wrong.
No.
So it's somebody that I picked over.
Hold on. Sure. Arkansas tournament first round. So I picked Arkansas in my my like pick 7 thing. Colgate. There we go. Oh wait, no, Colgate they played fine. They ended up beating 85-68, but maybe it was the first half was really bad. And then second round, Texas Tech, they only won by 2. Oral Roberts, kind of a Cinderella, only won by 2. Eventually, they lost to national champion Baylor. But like I said, didn't have a whole lot around him. I'm gonna pull up his stats real quick. So on the season, nearly 17 points per game, nearly 6 rebounds per game, 1.6 assists per game, 43% from the field, including 36% from 3, and 81% from the free throw line. In those tournament games, however, he scored 12, 15, 14, and 11. And I feel like people were definitely doubting him as that was happening. Whether or not that holds water, I don't think it does. I think he's going to be okay, but we'll see.
Yeah. What else do you want to say about Moody?
I wish we had Eli on. Honestly, he loved Moody. I think that he's 6'6". He's listed at 6'6", 205. I think he has I like his shot, even though like the numbers weren't great. I think that could very potentially translate. Obviously, he has a really good free throw percentage, which usually helps to project how how someone's going to shoot. But yeah, I don't know. I think he's just someone to keep an eye on. Another guy who maybe could potentially shoot up draft boards as we get going. And just wasn't sure if he'd be someone we'd get to talk about when we focus more on the Knicks.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely someone that I think is a super interesting prospect, and I think he's very, very fun. And he's one of these guys that is a weird kind of non-traditional prospect. And I think because of that, he has a very high ceiling if he can kind of connect some of these things, specifically the shooting and offense, along with his playmaking and for his size. Like he's just again a very interesting prospect.
But yeah, is there anyone else or anything from the college season you wanted to touch on before we start getting, more into? I think we're going to get into like the Knicks needs in the next couple episodes, and then I think we're going to split it up by positional need, guards and forwards.
Yeah, there's one player I want to talk about because this is someone that I think 2 months ago might have been projected in the Knicks kind of range. But because of the recency bias and the NCAA tournament kind of boost, is now being projected like top 10, which is wild. And that's Davion Mitchell.
Okay.
We don't need to go into great detail. He's someone we may still talk about as we move forward, because it's certainly an area of need for the Knicks and a guy that would be a great fit for what they need as far as a playmaking defensive guard that can shoot. But this was a guy that I think going into the tournament was projected like mid 20s. And now, I've seen him as high as 6 or 7.
Yeah. And also the thing that makes him different, I think he was a junior this year, right?
Correct. And a redshirt junior at that. So he's old. He's 22.
Okay. Yeah. But he does have some accolades, right? Like obviously NCAA champion. I'm guessing he was all tourney team. I know he was all Big 12, and he was the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. I think that was his calling card going into the tournament. Everyone talks about like how good his defense was. He did average 14 points per game this season. And I'm just pulling up the game logs real quick. I mean, in the tournament games, he ranged from 12 to 16 points per game. So yeah, it's definitely been interesting seeing him kind of shoot up draft boards. Like maybe he's another one of these like high floor guys that just people think he's gonna be solid. He's obviously gonna play defense, and they think like the offensive stuff will come. I'm not really sure.
He's just an interesting prospect because again, he's someone that I would have loved if the Knicks could get him at like 19. Right, I've said that, and I'll keep saying that as we talk about the Knicks needs of like you take one high floor guy like Mitchell, who's a fairly seemingly NBA ready prospect that will be able to contribute right away. And then you take a guy that may be a little more of a project, a little more of a high ceiling guy. That's my ideal. If the Knicks are going to draft both picks, that's my ideal usage. But now, like if him going, in that top 10 high lottery range, I did not see it coming. It's very interesting to me, and I do think that is that kind of NCAA tournament bump.
Yeah, for sure.
We don't have to go. I do think he'll come up in some of our conversations later. There's a lot of really good defensive prospects in this class. I think all of the guys that we've talked about today, specifically those top 3, but Moody as well, just all really good defenders. Those top 3 all being like potential all NBA type defenders, defensive player of the year type guys.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And I think at the very least, like again, kind of gearing it towards the Knicks, like you don't need a home run play at their draft level. You just need a solid guy, even a solid bench guy to just make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think that's it. So I think now we'll start getting more Knicks centric. We'll start bringing up, I think next episode we'll start talking about the Knicks needs, especially now that their season is over. And then start breaking down players. I know we're gonna be having player profiles coming out soon. By the time you hear this, there's a good chance at least some of them are out.
Yeah, my first one. I have the first one of the season for us, and it will be coming out on Tuesday.
So there we go. Cool. Well, make sure you're following all the draft coverage for TKW.
Yeah, it's going to start coming hot and heavy now. We're going to start getting into the profiles. We'll have some of these, some of these other writers, as well as obviously myself, to talk about the specific guys in kind of pairing the profiles with the podcast. I'm excited. I'm going to be talking about my guy, Deuce McBride. Speaking of defensive wonders, I'm going to be talking about him this Tuesday. He's someone that I'm definitely going to have a lot of thoughts on as we continue the draft season.
Cool. So obviously make sure you're following TKW. Make sure you're following Nick at Not the Fake NC with the underscores. And I'm at JRon44. I don't write anything, so I have nothing to tell you about. And yeah,
but a darn good Twitter follow. That's what you are.
Something like that. All right, we'll catch you on the next one.